Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to our cozy little corner of the internet. I'm AP Calculus Parentheses Satan, still gets me every time. And today I'll be reading Forgotten Child by BlueJ_Leaf. This is Hurt Comfort and it is Dadzawa, so I hope you guys enjoy. Here is a summary. I don't want to be alone anymore. Aizawa Shota, underground pro hero Eraserhead, was no stranger to the darker parts of modern life, and although he had a reputation for placing logic above emotions, he knew he wasn't heartless. After all, he vowed to help those no one else could, or would. He vowed to help those whose society had forgotten. It just hadn't been so literal before. Do you have any family, kid? Any place to go? Shota asked the question, already sure of the answer. It was clear from the way the kid's sturdy clothes hung to his frame, from the dullness in his green eyes, and the way Shota had glimpsed him hunkered in shadowed alleyways near every night for the past 3 weeks. This kid had nobody. Now, it seemed he had finally earned enough trust that he didn't bolt the second he caught sight of the hero, although that might be down to the weather. The temperature had dropped significantly in the past couple of days, and the kid didn't have near enough warm clothes, nor, it seemed, food to fuel him to keep him warm, and he was visibly shivering. Still, those green eyes observed him warily for several moments before Shota got an answer. "Not anymore," the kid said. "I thought I did, but I lost them too." There was such profound sadness in his eyes. The kid couldn't be any older than 8 or 9 years old. He shouldn't have experienced whatever he had to appear so haunted. "Was that when I started seeing you around?" the hero asked, in lieu of any more probing questions. He can't be scaring him off on our first real conversation. A jerking nod. "I brought you some food and warmer clothes, kid," Shota said softly, pulling a pre-packaged sandwich, granola bar, and 2 bottles of water from a bag he bought. He showed the kid those items, plus the hat, gloves and socks, and jacket visible in the bag, then put the food back and carefully slid it across the surface of the low roof they were perched on. The hero shuffled back onto what he hoped was a safe distance. The kid leaned over, grabbed the bag, rummaged briefly through the items, and then looked back at Shota like he was about to cry. "Thank you," he swallowed. "But I can't repay you for this." Shota shut that down quick. "No need, kid. It's a gift." The kid really did cry then, sniffling and wiping at his eyes with tattered hooded sleeves. "I'm sorry," he stuttered after a few moments of composing himself. He shook his head as if to clear it. Nobody." "It's alright, kid. No need to apologize." The hero made an effort to look as non-threatening as possible. Relaxed posture, hands visible, usual scowl absent. Before he spoke again, softer than he had spoken to anyone before, maybe. "Can you tell me your name?" The kid tensed up, but still answered, stuttering out and, you can, Izuku." Shota nodded. "Alright, Izuku. I'm Eraserhead. I'm a pro hero. Do you mind telling me why you're out here alone?" And Izuku shook his head frantically, moved to get to his feet. No. You can't. I'm sorry. I don't want." Because that was a dangerous line of questioning, Izuku knew, and the last thing he wanted to do was hurt a pro hero. "I don't want to hurt you. Please, I can't." Hey, it's alright. You won't hurt me. Are your parents..." He purposefully left the question open, hoping to get some kind of indication from the kid, even if he didn't answer directly. It worked to an extent, but Izuku was also panicking, which was not the intended outcome. My fault, always my fault, I can't. I'm so sorry, Eraserhead-san, I didn't mean to." "I promise, whatever happened was not your fault, Izuku," the hero said, surety and confidence in his voice for all that remained comforting. "Why would you think that it was?" And Izuku could see the hero putting the pieces together, could sense the question on the tip of his tongue, and the child's quirk stirred an interest within him, as if it, too, could sense what was going to happen. He wouldn't let it. Before Eraserhead could ask the question that would surely doom him, Izuku had slung a bag over his shoulder, dropped off the side of the building, and swung from the fire escape into the alley floor in one fluid motion. Shota watched him go. He didn't want to chase the kid down, and with any luck he'd be seeing him again the next night. But there was one question he couldn't get off his mind. Why did Izuku think whatever happened to him was his fault? Was it his quirk? Shota didn't see Izuku again until 2 nights later, much to his concern, and when he did find the kid, well, let's just say his concern was not immediately ceased. He had heard a scream, not the kid scream. It sounded older, feminine, and it was cut off worryingly abruptly. That was what drew him into the alley, expecting an assault, but what he saw was rather less run-of-the-mill for him. There were 3 people in the alley. The clearly unconscious form of a young woman laying sprawled on the ground, an unassuming middle-aged man hovering halfway crouched over her with a delighted gleam in his eyes, and Izuku standing behind him with a broken pipe in both hands. The kid brought the pipe down over the back of the man's head. It clearly didn't have the intended effect, even though the impact appeared strong and solid. A part of his quirk? The man stumbled, but quickly straightened himself and turned to face the kid. "Well, look what we have here! Some little one fancies himself a hero," the man jeered. "Why don't I teach you your place, As the man shoved Izuku hard against the wall, Shota decided that he had seen enough, done enough waiting, but just as he made to push himself out of the shadows, the kid spoke up again and things got weird. "But you don't know about my quirk. Maybe I'm really strong." It sounded weak to both listeners, and the man laughed. "Oh yeah? Well, what's your quirk then, Pipsqueak?" It might not have been visible in the light of day, but at night, in the shadowed alleyway, Shota could clearly see the moment the kid's eyes started to glow dimly. And by the light shining on the back on the kid, the hero was pretty sure the aggressive eyes were glowing too. Everyone froze. "You should, let go of me?" The man shook his head. What the hell? No, why would I? That doesn't sound like fun." Izuku swallowed as his gaze intensified, strengthened. "Well, you know what might be fun? Breaking into a police station." The man stumbled backwards and put a hand over his head, then straightened and smiled and said, "You know what? That does sound like fun. Just imagine the looks on their faces." Izuku laughed nervously. Yeah, it'll be hilarious. You should go do that. The nearest police station is 3 blocks down that way on the left." As the man turned around with a deranged smile and saunter, then ran off into the direction the kid had indicated, Shota saw that his eyes were indeed glowing. Finally, the hero emerged from the shadows that concealed him. When Izuku saw him, his eyes, still glowing, lit with panic as he quickly took 3 steps back further into the alley. Instead of going after the villain, Shota crouched to check on the woman. She was breathing steadily with a strong pulse, and her only injury seemed to be a hit to the head and some scrapes from where she had fallen. The hero pulled out his phone and texted for an ambulance. 1 unconscious female, vital steady, head trauma, but left her where she was in case of a neck injury, and looked up at Izuku. "Didn't take you for a vigilante, kid," he said. Izuku blinked in confusion, and then waved his hands quickly in front of him. No, I'm really not, I swear. I just saw that guy knocked her out, and I couldn't do nothing, and I didn't have a phone, so I couldn't call anyone. But you're here, so I guess maybe I probably shouldn't have. I must have been in the way. I'm sorry." "Hey, kid, slow down." He felt bad for cutting the kid off, but his rambling was getting pretty far off track. "You don't need to apologize. Just don't make a habit of it. Is the guy really going to break into a police station?" Izuku nodded mutely. Then, Probably, unless he gets, distracted. Huh. The hero lifted his phone again, opting to text Tsukashi directly. Hey, there might be a man on his way to break into the station. That's some quirk, Shota had thought. Hey, Izuku, kid, if you don't mind me asking. No. Apparently, he did mind. No, don't ask me anything. I promise I won't do this again. He screwed his eyes shut, put his hands over them, and took a deep breath. There was something in the way that he spoke that had Shota pausing to reassess and collect himself. Then he got a text back from Tsukashi. What the hell, Racer? Then, we got him. How did you know? While he read the messages and debated internally what to text back, how to explain this, the kid lowered his hands, turned around, vaulted the chain-link fence in the middle of the alley, and took off into the night. Again, the hero watched him go. At least he had been wearing the clothes Shota had got him. Problem child. It was the next night after a very strange discussion with Tsukashi. Apparently the man from the night before had no recollection of Izuku. That Shota finally figured out what the kid's quirk was. Truthfully, the hero had never seen anything quite like it. He found the kid perched on the same rooftop as the first night. This time, before he approached, Shota considered his options. Clearly, the kid didn't want to talk about his quirk. The last 2 times he had bolted had been just before it was likely to be brought up. At the same time, his hero name was Eraserhead for a reason. If Izuku's quirk was really as dangerous and out of control as the kid thought it was, though based on last night it didn't look particularly dangerous, for all that it seemed to alter perception and decision-making on some level, then Shota could just erase it. He didn't like to tell people about his quirk, with how valuable surprise can be, but he also really didn't want to make the kid run off again. The weather hadn't gotten any better, and getting Izuku off the streets was now a priority. With all that in mind, when Shota landed on the roof and approached the kid, he made sure to quickly reassure the kid that he could not, in fact, harm the hero. Hey, Izuku, he said. The kid turned around to face him, panic flaring before fading again as he identified Shota as not a threat to him. Hi, Eraserhead-san. He didn't make a show of being ready to run, but the hero could see the way he edged away, the way he glanced quickly towards the nearby fire escape, and angled his body to move at a moment's notice. Still, Shota had his attention, so he said what he thought would help. You don't need to tell me about your quirk, but whatever it is, I promise you can't hurt me, alright? That, it turned out, was not the correct thing to say. Izuku started shaking his head, shaking all over. His eyes began to glow. Shota didn't notice that, somehow, at the time. He was clearly extremely upset by something. Then Shota felt it. A slight pressure behind his eyes, not unlike when he used his quirk, fading as quickly as it had come, but leaving him feeling unbalanced. He stumbled and shook his head to clear it, brought his hands up to rub his eyes, and when he opened his eyes again, his kid was crying. Why was he crying? He wasn't aware of anything being wrong now. The dizziness had passed, and some part of Shota felt proud of the little greenette. He must have good control of his quirk if he could turn it off so fast. So why was he crying? That was simply unacceptable. He moved forward confidently but carefully, telegraphing his movements as put his hands on either side of Izuku's face, looking right into his eyes, still, somehow, not noticing that they glowed, and wiping the tears with his thumb. He realized his kid was mumbling, I'm sorry, so sorry, please, no. Kid, Izuku, it's fine, I'm fine, the hero reassured him. It's alright, kid. No, it's not. I can't. The crying picked up again. Not again, not a hero. Shota didn't realize he was hugging the kid until Izuku hugged him back, clutching the sides of his jumpsuit and openly sobbing, while the hero made shushing noises, held him and rubbed soothing circles into his too-sharp back. Wasn't that strange? When had Shota ever done something without realizing it? Kid, we'll figure it out, okay? I don't care if your quirk is dangerous. The hero wasn't really thinking his words over, but he didn't mind. He was saying only what felt was true. My quirk can keep me safe. You don't have to worry about it with me, right? The kid just shook his head, where it was buried and showed a scarf. It's called erasure. I can erase any people's quirk by looking at them. You hear me, kid? You don't need to worry. You don't need to be scared. And while Izuku's about to hitch, he loosened his death grip, and the hero smiled at his dirty green hair. I'll take care of you now, Izuku. You don't need to be alone. You can stay with me. How's that sound? Do you like cats? And that, well, it came out. He hadn't planned on taking the kid in himself. He planned on working with the authorities to place him, make sure he had somewhere good. But in that moment, he couldn't think of any possibility other than taking him home. And for some small part of him, that sent alarm bells ringing, because as much as his friends liked to tease him for taking in strays, it really wasn't like Shoto to promise things like this when he didn't even know if he could follow through. He didn't even really know Izuku, really. Yet he had decided that this was his kid, as if it was a given from the start. When did I decide this was my kid? Why am I speaking without thinking? Izuku momentarily tightened his hold, and Shoto reflectively squeezed back. Then the kid took a deep, shuddering breath and pushed himself away. The hero remained crouched and kept an arm on Izuku's shoulder. Something in him twisted at the pain at the kid's face, because he didn't know how to fix it. Eraserhead, son? The kid whispered. Could you use your quirk on me, right now? And who was he to deny his own kid? He hadn't noticed the pressure in his head, the fog over his senses, or the way his body seemed to lag behind his mind. He hadn't truly noticed, except in passing, the way his emotions were all heightened, or the way he had gotten too close to the kid, how he moved to comfort with him without thinking. He hadn't noticed any of that, or that the kid's eyes were glowing, until his own quirk flared to life and the fog lifted from his mind. Green eyes returned to normal, and Shoto shook away the remnants of Izuku's quirk. The kid was sobbing again, and backed away out of the hero's reach. He dropped erasure and made a placating gesture. Hey, kid, Izuku, it's okay, really. You didn't mean to, yeah? And the kid breathed in sharply, his eyes widening. You remember me? Of course I remember you, kid. Mind telling me exactly what triggered your quirk? He then felt it again, that pressure behind his eyes. He knew what to look for this time, and he saw the kid's eyes glowing too. A flash of erasure was all it took to shut it off again. Izuku sniffled, took a few deep, steadying breaths. It's just whenever, if someone asks or talks about my quirk, it just happens. I can't stop it. Shoto nodded thoughtfully. Do you know exactly what your quirk does? This time he activated erasure before he was even done speaking, and Izuku broke out into a smile for the first time he had ever seen on the kid, all clear in his tear-tracked face. I know a lot of Eraserhead-san. I always wanted to talk about it, but obviously I couldn't because, you know. His smile dropped, and he took a deep breath. Okay, so someone asks me about my quirk, and their eyes all go all glowy, and mine do too, I think. Shoto nodded in confirmation. Right, so from what I can tell, it acts a lot like a drug, maybe? It makes people do things they usually wouldn't, like that guy breaking into a police station. It messes with their perception and reaction times to stuff too, like drugs do. Makes sense so far, kid. I can see why you had a hard time with a quirk like that. Shoto said, taking advantage of the small pause while Izuku rearranged his thoughts. Yeah, right. It lasts for about an hour, sometimes more, and I think it gets worse over time. It makes people reckless, but that's not really why it's so bad. Izuku swallowed nervously. Shotokan didn't like the line of that thinking. Kid, no quirk is good or bad, alright? You clearly haven't had quirk counseling. You should have to learn to control it. But that doesn't make you a quirk or you bad. Do you understand? Izuku shook his head. I know, but it's the reason I couldn't get any counseling or anything is once a quirk wears off, the person forgets. The hero frowns. Forgets what? Izuku blinked back in a vain attempt to force another trickle of tears back. He sniffled again. When he spoke, his voice quiet. They forget me. Shota's blood ran cold. Izuku kept talking. They forget my face, my voice, anything about me, anything I said. The first time my quirk came in, I was 6. It didn't last very long, but when I tried to tell my father what happened, it activated again, and he thought it'd be fun to light the couch on fire. Izuku kept crying. He never really stopped. Mum came home, and we were outside, and Father was lighting more stuff on fire. The house was all gone. And I told her what happened, and when my quirk activated, when it activated on her, she hugged me and told me that she would be okay. They'll be okay, and drove us to the hospital. But the quirk stopped once we got there, and she forgot me. Shota felt the desperate urge to hug the kid again. Erasure did nothing to erase it. He didn't know what to do. I tried to explain, but they left without me, and I got into a car crash. I saw it on the news later. They're dead. It's my fault. Izuku sat down, hugging his knees, hiding his face. And shit, this was bad. Shota could piece together what likely happened after that. He wondered how many hospital staff were affected. Izuku didn't have to speak back for his quirk to take effect, so anyone who asked him the most basic of questions could have been under the influence, as it were, on a job, and then forgotten Izuku was even there, leaving him to likely be asked about his quirk again. Then what? He had apparently spent years on the streets, avoiding anyone asking about his quirk, unable to seek help. Frankly, it was a miracle the kid had survived this long. He may have spoken under the effects of the quirk before, but he realized now that what he'd said was still valid. The safest place for Izuku would be with someone who could stop his quirk while he figured out how to control it himself. He crouched down next to the kid, keeping a few feet of distance. Kid, how long have you been out on your own? How old are you? Izuku lifted his head from between his knees, looking absolutely exhausted. I'm 10 now, he said. That put him solidly into the worryingly small category, but Shota supposed that made sense. And I have to be really careful. I only stay places where no one asks about quirks. I meet some people, I think their quirks are dangerous too, so nobody asks. At least not at first. He took a deep breath. There was a guy, a teenager, I think, who calls himself Darby. He's got a fire quirk, but it hurts him. If I use my quirk on him, he starts. Izuku curled and tied it on himself again. He kills people. Shota's heart would have broken if it hadn't already. He remembered Tsukauchi talking about a new villain who burned his victims to ash. He hoped this wasn't the same person, even knowing that hoping was likely pointless. The hero shuffled closer. But even after he forgot me, he'd still be nice to me. If I went to him for help later, I think he has a soft spot for kids, you know. And Oneshot knew. But I couldn't stay. If I stayed for too long, he'd ask me about my quirk, and his voice broke. Nobody else. I've been so lonely. It's alright now, kid, Shota said, lifting an arm. Can I hug you? Izuku threw himself under the hero's arm, shoving his face into the capture staff, and cried, I'm just so lonely, Raisen-san. I don't... My name's Aizawa, kid. Or Shota, whichever you prefer. He pulled Izuku closer, lifted up some of his scarf and readjusted it so it wrapped around the both of them. And everything will be okay now. Izuku held on, cried into the hero's shirt, probably getting snot and tears all over the man, but Shota really didn't care. What do you think about staying with me, kid? I could help you with your quirk, you would have regular meals and a warm place to sleep. He felt Izuku fervently nod into his shoulder, his grip tightening even as he pulled back just enough to respond. Please, I don't want to be alone anymore. Aizawa-san, please don't leave me alone. And Aizawa bent his head and curled his body over and around the kid, every protective instinct bleeding into his words as he spoke. You'll never have to be alone ever again, kid. I'll make sure of it. Okay, I absolutely love this fic. Absolutely amazing. This actually turned out really good. I really like the setup that I have here. Yeah. I might put it on my community posts in a bit, where like my setup and shenanigans. Anyway, I'm shocked I'm still coping today, because I've had less than 3 hours sleep, so yippee. And it is now almost 1 o'clock, so yay, I'm still alive. All jokes aside, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later. Make sure to eat, drink, and sleep. I know I'm not the best, but please try to take it. English. Please try to be better than me. There we go. English. Anyway, be do, crime gay.